you can find that person, and it takes a little bit of money and it takes some creative bonus structures, but if you can find that person, then the owner really could start at Absentee. So we were very upfront with any candidate that come to the equation, and we found a couple that we looked them in the eye, John, and we said, hey, listen, all the concepts that you need to make this successful, we can vet out and validate throughout our system. But we're always upfront and honest and say we haven't had anybody start it that way yet. And so the first couple came on board, they started it that way. It's gone pretty well, and it's just a little bit differently than how we've done business for years. And so don't get me wrong, my preference is to still have an owner-operator come in, but if somebody's willing to give up a little bit of the profit margin and bring some extra resources to the table, this does appear to be a viable way to get a fish window cleaning started, and we've got a good track record so far.
Welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast, where we talk about all things franchising. Now, here's your host, Dr. John P. Hayes.
I'm back with another episode of the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast. My guest is Randy Cross, Fish Window Cleaning. Randy, thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, John. I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I know you have a lot to share with the folks who follow my podcast. Let's go back to, how did you discover franchising? Everybody has their own story. Nobody grows up knowing about franchising. Very few people go to school to study franchising. How did it happen for you?
Well, for me, I was working at a technology firm back in 2002. I had been there for about 10 years, and I had met a franchise consultant. The franchise consultant came to my house, learned my strengths and weaknesses. He interviewed my wife and I. He asked us a few questions like our financial tolerance and those type of things, and he presented me 4 options. Obviously, fish window cleaning being one of them. And we opened up our fish franchise in Grand Rapids, Michigan back in 2003. But yeah, no one wakes up one day, John, and dreams about being in the window cleaning business. And very few people understand franchising for sure.
Yeah. So what were you doing prior to this, deciding to become a franchisee?
I was a mid-level manager and a technology reseller. We bought and sold computers and fixed them up for Fortune 500 customers in the West Michigan area.
And what was the motivation to talk to someone about a franchise?
Well, a buddy of mine actually was quitting that job that I loved so much, and he had kind of told me about it. And my knowledge of franchising at the time, John, was that you had to be a millionaire and buy a McDonald's.
Yeah.
When I found out that you could get into many different franchise concepts for a $100,000 to $150,000 investment, I thought, well, that sounds like something I could do. And literally, I was dipping my toe into the water, just kind of exploring it, and then got sucked in full money.
Yeah, and people still think that you need to be a millionaire, you need to buy a McDonald's to be in franchising, and of course we know that's not the case. 10 of my graduates to date of the Titus Center for Franchising have become franchisees even before they graduated in some cases, and they all spent in that $100,000 range for service businesses. People just don't realize the vast nature of franchising and the opportunities that are available. When you heard about it, did you think a royalty, upfront fee? I don't think I want to do that. Rules and regulations, was that a turnoff, or how did you relate to that?
Well, I got to tell you, I as a franchisee myself, I'll kind of back up and say, people say, Randy, it must be great to be an entrepreneur. I actually don't consider myself an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is the one that had the dream, he built the concept, he developed the systems, he's tinkering with things to perfect them. I think a franchisee, while they might have entrepreneurial skills, they're more of a direction follower and a recipe follower. And that's me and my personality in a nutshell. Is following directions. And my consultant did a very, very good job of kind of talking me through royalties. He said, hey, listen, if you're going to complain about royalty dollars, stop what you're doing, buy a book called Window Cleaning for Dummies, start your own business, and move forward. But if you're going to want to get there farther, faster, with systems and processes, pay those royalty dollars, and then Randy, someday when you get very, very large and you don't think you need the franchisor anymore, then make sure that you are finding ways to get value out of those royalty dollars. And I have been able to do that with Fish for 22 years. The support that they offer, even to me 22 years later, is fantastic as I run my business today. And I promise you, I never regret sending a royalty dollar to Fish Window Clean.
So looking back on 22 years, when you started out, do you ever recall a time when you thought, maybe I made a mistake leaving my job and becoming a franchisee?
Never once, actually. I think that's a huge blessing, obviously, but it was very, very difficult for me to make the decision. They still tease me. It took me about 9 months to get over the hump and actually sign the agreements. But once I signed those agreements, it's literally been follow their process. And the only credit I give myself for this whole process, John, is I followed the directions that Fish Window Cleaning and the Merrick family gave me, probably better than just about anybody else. I've stayed true to the system.
Yeah. Do you by any chance know your disc personality?
I don't off the top of my head.
All right. Well,
I know I took that years ago. You can probably tell me.
Yeah. You definitely have a lot of C, the competence, DISC, in your profile. And those are people, once they trust the rules, the regulations, the system, once they trust, they do it. And they don't veer off plan. Those become great franchisees, veterans who know how to follow a plan, who know how to do what they're told and don't object to that. And franchising isn't exactly that way, as you know. It's not you're being told what to do day to day, but you do have a plan. If you don't follow the plan, you're not going to be happy sending royalties to the franchisor.
Correct. Yeah. And how I justify the majority of my royalty dollars, John, and I think it dives into some of the absenteeism, it is, listen, when I wanted to step back away from that business, the staff at corporate headquarters helps support the staff in my franchise location directly, and I kind of get out of the way. Because as much credit as I give myself for being a direction follower, I'm like every other person. We want to tinker with it. It's ours. The more you tinker with it, there's risks in that. It could go better, but it could go worse. And then God forbid something happens to me, or maybe I want to go play golf at Pebble Beach for a couple weeks. If I put all these other systems and processes in place and franchise headquarters doesn't know about it, they can't support my staff in Grand Rapids directly. So I have bought hook, line, and sinker into just following that system and not tinkering with it. So that way the staff at corporate can help my staff directly if I'm not involved for some reason.
Yeah, you've done it the right way and you've profited from doing so. How long was it until you weren't the only employee and that you could bring people in and you actually didn't have to go out and clean windows? How long did it take?
I never had to go out and clean windows. The Fish window cleaning model, I actually brought a manager with me to training school. When I got back from training school, we hired a salesperson and we hired our first window cleaner. And that very first day, we were out cold call selling and drumming up new commercial business, which is our mainstay here at Fish. And so my role was to literally go out and find new customers. It was the manager's role to get the cleaner up and trained and sub for them if they were sick. But he was production, I was sales. I hired a college kid underneath me to sell with me, and we jump-started our business very quickly that way.
And what about window cleaning? Did that appeal to you? And it must have somehow, because you're still doing it 22 years later.
It's a no nights, no weekends, no holidays business, John. That's what appealed to me most of all. The other three concepts that the consultant showed me were a little bit higher end technology. One was a framing concept, one was a signs concept. You'll chuckle out of this one. The fourth one was a mobile pet grooming concept. That one was fun because I could keep my job and do that part-time, but I threw that aside for a variety of reasons. Really, it boiled down to the no nights, no weekends, no holidays with Fish. So the franchise consultant that I was working with, John, presented me the four concepts. Fish became the leader because the other two were a framing concept and a signs concept. They were more technology based. I wanted to get out of that. The fourth concept, you'll chuckle probably, was a mobile pet grooming concept. But if the rubber hit the road and I had to go out and perform the service, I didn't want to groom dogs. I wanted to leave technology. I knew that I could pick up a mop and a squeegee and actually perform the service. Although I didn't have to do a whole lot of that.
Yeah, but you did some. You went out and actually cleaned windows?
Correct, yeah. Yeah. We use a water-fed pole technology as well, and that was a fun way to clean glass, actually. But mop and squeegee or water-fed pole, I was out there. I've got pictures of me performing the service.
And then, were you aware from the very beginning, does Fish teach that you don't make money by being the window cleaning technician? You're going to make money by building your business and having lots of people out there cleaning windows on the jobs that you attract. Was that the philosophy from the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Merrick, the owner and founder here, and his sons, Matt and Nathan, the three of them, they're huge believers in creating a business model where you have employees underneath you actually performing the service. They're huge. We actually pass out a copy of the E-Myth at every Discovery Day with prospective franchisees that are coming in, talking about working on your business and not in it. I know how much money I could make if I was a single window cleaner, and I kind of like the amount of money I make now that I have a few more cleaners underneath me cleaning glass.
Mm-hmm. And then at some point, you decided that being a franchisee wasn't everything you wanted to do. You became president of the Thor company. Tell us that story.
Well, so the key to being a successful franchisee is following the system, right? And that doesn't leave room for a lot of creative energy. Literally, I know people chuckle when I say this, but I literally got bored running the franchise. I had put a manager in place and people in place, and they were basically doing the lion's share of the work. I had a salesperson in place. I had worked myself out of a job. I was in my upper 30s and playing maybe a little bit too much golf during the work week and going home a little too early every day, and it was just too early in life to start coasting. And so I looked at some other franchise concepts, couldn't find anything that I liked as much as Fish. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe it didn't need to be as good as Fish, but at the time I thought, why would I start another business if it wasn't as good as Fish? And then the owner and founder, Mike Merrick, came to me and put me to work in operations. He let me work out of the house in Grand Rapids. I flew around the country, opened up franchises, and then a couple years later we were blessed with a lot of people looking into franchising, and so I moved over into franchise development. And in about 2013, Mike started talking to me about taking over for him. He and his family, they kind of were doing the same thing. They all backed away from the business to work on it rather than in it, and they wanted me to be in the franchise and run the franchise, and that has worked very well for their family and for me obviously as well. It's been a wonderful journey with the family, and I can't say enough good things about Fish Window Cleaning and the Merrick family.
Great. How many franchisees are there now with Fish?
We are at 220 people representing 270 territories in 45 different states.
And when you were at that point where you were a little bored with what you were doing, had you thought about, well, let's open Fish in another state?
I did. I just didn't seem to have the fire in the belly to do, a multi-unit, and absenteeism at Fish had kind of developed over time, and it continues to develop with us. Our original model was the owner was kind of hands-on in the business, not cleaning glass, but selling and overseeing. And so finding another manager and doing that in another state hadn't been really vetted out at that time 10 years ago. I was really the first guy to leave the state and manage mine from afar. And now that's prevalent within Fish, but at the time it was a little too early to do that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I found very interesting about Fish when I spoke with you at the International Franchise Association convention was that you may have found a formula that will work for absentee franchising. By and large, I'm not a fan of people who are out promoting concepts, keep your job, be an absentee franchisee. We never heard of that prior to the pandemic, rarely ever heard of that. Today, it's heavily promoted, and there may be people who are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in concepts, thinking they're going to keep their job and spend 5 hours a week working in a franchise, only to find out it just doesn't work that way most of the time. And what did you experience, and then what have you all developed at Fish?
Well, and this kind of developed almost out of necessity for us, John. I mean, our original model, owner starts it, and then they develop into absenteeism, kind of like my story. I stepped back over time and then became absentee. But, so many concepts were, basically, let me back up and say the type of candidates that wanted to buy Fish were being taken well care of inside of corporate America. There just weren't a lot of people looking at fish. And so we started looking, what are some alternatives? Could we do this absentee right from the start? And as I recall my conversation with you, I think you were intrigued when we've recently started this about 3 years ago now, where we've asked candidates to bring an extra amount of money to the table to cover a salaried manager. And in many cases, what we'd like to have them do is give that person a little skin in the game, maybe a small percentage of the ownership or a very aggressive bonus structure, to make sure that manager that is going to be driving the business has a vested interest. And if you can find that person, and it takes a little bit of money and it takes some creative bonus structures, but if you can find that person, then the owner really could start at absentee. So we were very upfront with any candidate that come to the equation, and we found a couple that we looked them in the eye, John, and we said, hey, listen, all the concepts that you need to make this successful, we can vet out and validate throughout our system. But we're always upfront and honest and say, we haven't had anybody start it that way yet. And so the first couple came on board, they started it that way. It's gone pretty well, and it's just a little bit differently than how we've done business for years. And so don't get me wrong, my preference is to still have an owner-operator come in, but if somebody's willing to give up a little bit of the profit margin and bring some extra resources to the table, this does appear to be a viable way to get a fish window cleaning started, and we've got a good track record so far.
How much additional money are we talking about that will cost someone to get into a fish if they want to be absentee under your model?
Yeah, so the original model is really somewhere between 120 to 150,000, depending on the territory that you sign up for, small, executive, or standard, which is in between. And then we asked an absentee owner to bring an extra $100,000 to $125,000 to the table. And really what that's for, John, is to cover that salary for a manager and in an additional vehicle. The original model calls for one vehicle out of the gate. We'd like a couple vehicles out of the gate for the absentee, so that way all those key players have ways to get around town and do their thing. And yeah, so an extra $100,000, which, don't get me wrong, is a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if you get to keep your job and you've got a revenue stream, that obviously also takes the pressure off those folks. You know, when I started this thing, I gave up income. I was COBRAing my insurance. You know, we were living off savings for a year. So there are some benefits, obviously, to starting an absentee, much less pressure.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of these folks who have bought into that absentee concept have failed. And I don't know if it's 20% or if it's 80%. I think it depends on the brand, because every brand has, as you know, different success and failure rates. But absentee seems to have more. And I was just recently speaking with a absentee franchisee who told he could keep his job, spend 5 hours a week working, invested almost $500,000, and discovered that the big problem was keeping the general manager. He was on his third general manager, but he was also running out of money. And he ran into real estate issues where he didn't do a good job and the franchisor didn't perhaps provide the assistance that he could have used to vet out a great. So lots of things can go wrong on the absentee side. And I think that included, he was buying a 3-pack, 3 territories, instead of just one. That would have made sense. Do you believe in the 3-pack, 5-pack? Do your absentees have to buy that? I wouldn't think so.
No, it's actually just the opposite. And you know, I'm not against multi-unit ownership. Don't get me wrong when I say this, but my preference is that fish window cleaning is a system full of single unit operators. There is so much glass inside of every territory, John. You don't need more territory to make a very good living at fish window cleaning. So it's just the opposite. I will not allow multi-unit right from the beginning. They must start in one. They must prove themselves. We've just recently increased our expansion standards again, because I want to prevent our franchisees from doing land grabs and just, you know, if they bring me a business plan to go out and do multi-unit, great, I will look at it and I will most likely approve it as long as they are meeting their standards that we set. but it's just the opposite with us. We don't make money selling franchises. We make money by franchisees becoming very successful at what they do.
And paying you a royalty.
Well, and that's the only way we make money at Fish. You know, we don't sell you the meats and the cheeses and the cups. I hope I don't offend my folks at Subway or other places, but our only revenue stream is royalty dollars.
Service
we
business.
don't sell the uniforms. We don't sell the equipment. Our success is tied to our franchisees. And Mike Merrick at my Discovery Day 23 years ago, that's what he said, and that's probably why I joined him, is because I knew he wasn't making money unless he was helping me become a successful franchise owner.
When you think about your top franchisees, let's say the top 20, about 10% of your network, who are they? What kinds of people will get into the top 20? What are they doing that other franchisees, the bottom 20?
The top 20 are staying engaged with corporate headquarters. The number one sign of a successful franchise owner is that they're staying engaged with Fish Window Cleaning Corporate. They're listening to us. They're, for the most part, following the system. Even when they want to deviate, they call us and let us know, and we try and talk them off the ledge or get them to other franchisees that have tried those things. And at the end of the day, they give up on the dream of tinkering and trying to make everything perfect, and they come alongside our system, which is a good, solid A system, and quit messing around with it, put managers in place, and let our staff support their managers directly and get out of the way. That's the traits of our top 20 for sure.
And if you're in the top 20, would you say that you're a dominant personality and that you've got to control everything? You're in charge. Everything goes through you. You're the deal maker. By the way, Donald Trump is an off-the-chart D personality. He might not have I, S, and C in his personality. People either love that or they hate that, but that's the D. The Ds are the drivers, the dominant people. Do you think that's the personality at the top of your network?
Well, I guess I would say I'm looking at myself, I guess, in the mirror and how I run my operation. I like to know what's going on, but I don't need to be in the nitty-gritty detail of everything. I want the high-level stuff, and then I want to leave it to other people to go out and implement the overall strategy. And it's kind of that way with the Merrick family and the franchisor. We want steady, consistent growth and happy franchisees. And we're just working towards those couple things at a high level and not really getting into the nitty-gritty detail ourselves. We let our people do that. So I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, I do have some top level franchisees that are ultimate Ds, like you say, but for the most part, the majority of that top 20, they're just happy and following a system and putting people in place and following it. They don't have to be that person you described.
Yeah. So maybe the influencer, the I personality in the disc, these are people who love people. And you said putting people in place. Well, that's what the I can do very well. So perhaps the people at the top, and oftentimes franchisees who perform well, are I personalities, and they probably have some dominant in their personality as well. But that doesn't mean the S and the C. The S is the steady personality, the behind-the-scenes personality, who likes to know what's going on, be part of a team, doesn't come up with original ideas, won't stand up and give a speech, doesn't want to take any risks, which also perfect for franchising. The S is more likely to call the corporate office and say, here's what I'm thinking about doing. Is it a good idea or not? And then the C personality, who doesn't trust anybody in the beginning, the competent, those are the numbers crunchers, and those are people who, if you want to sell them, give them the bad news first, because they know in every deal there's bad news. Don't withhold it if you want to develop a relationship with them. And they become great franchisees as well. Also dependent on how much selling does the president, the franchisee, have to do. If they've got to go out and sell, then they've got to have D or I in their personality. So I would guess you have a good mix in your top 20.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the number one way we win business is knocking on commercial doors and asking to write a free estimate. So that takes a unique personality, right? Not everybody likes to do that. But
yeah, the S won't do that. And the C probably won't do that. These are not people. Yeah. But the D's and the I's do that. But then they've got to be good at not doing the work themselves, because as you pointed out, you're not going to make money that way.
Right.
You've got to be the Gerber philosophy, the E-Myth philosophy. You got to work on it, not in it. And yet, why is it, Randy, that so many franchisees don't get it? They just don't understand, even though franchisors will say, we teach everybody the same. We give them the same training and the same support. And yet some people are multimillionaires in our system, and some people just don't like us and don't validate buying our franchise. What are we not getting across to people?
You know, I wish I had the answer to that question. It's obviously frustrates me because I feel, again, like all I've done is follow what the Merricks have told me to do, and it's been very, very successful. So why wouldn't other people do that? I think it's a control freak mentality. They have to control. Sometimes they don't like the simplicity. You know, I think we all bring strengths from, you know, our degrees and our experiences in life, and we want to be the business owner, and we think being the business owner means controlling absolutely everything. And so I think some of it, John, is just not having the confidence of giving up control. For example, the majority of our support staff, a lot of our support staff at Fish, while we've got a lot of folks that have been at corporate for 15 to 20 years, we have a fair amount of folks that are in their upper 20s and mid 30s. And so the average franchise candidate coming in is 50 years old, and then they're putting their faith and trust in 20 and 30-year-old folks, coaching and guiding them with $150,000 or $250,000 of investment money. I think that's hard for some of our franchisees to swallow. But if they do it, boy, the results are so good. So I spend the majority of my time trying to convince my franchisees, just do what I did. Trust the plan. But I think it's just giving up on what they were doing in their past and following this nice, simple, easy system, which is sell it, clean it, collect the money from it, repeat, and then enjoy your free time from the rewards that business ownership provide you.
Where do you stand on the broker community? Do you use brokers to sell Fish franchises, or are you doing it internally, or is it a combination?
No, we love the broker networks. I came through a broker network. I kind of joke about it from time to time. You know, nobody wakes up one day and dreams about being in the window cleaning business. You know, it's just not even on anybody's radar screen. And so I'm very appreciative of all the broker networks. They're great folks. They really do have people's best interest in mind and trying to find a good fit for them. Because, you know, we have, for example, you know, Fish is a little bit different than some of the other franchised concepts of window cleaning even. The way we go out and market our business is much different. So even though it's two window cleaning businesses, one candidate might be a great fit for Fish and not such a great candidate for one of the other window cleaning companies. It's the consultant that helps steer all that. Even though same businesses, right? Because our marketing strategy is different from our competitors. So I love the consultant networks, and yeah, we rely on them heavily.
You also mentioned the younger population coming into franchising, perhaps in a manager role. That's who I teach, the 20-somethings, the Gen Zs. They are a very interesting group of young people in that they want to be in their own businesses. They are ideal for franchise ownership. But whatever they do, it has to have meaning in a number of ways. These are not young people who will just take a job because they need a job. They don't see themselves that way. They're going to want to work, whether the owner or not. They're going to want to work with a company that has high standards, but that company also has to have redeeming value socially. So whether you're helping to build schools or the church or the community in some way, the state, or you're contributing nationally in some way, if a company doesn't have that desire, the Gen Zs are not attracted to them and definitely not attracted to become franchisees with those groups. So it's becoming more and more important, if you want to attract those younger people, show them how you're building, helping to build a socially conscious community or world. And they become great leaders and franchisees. I'm very proud of the 10 who have graduated from my program at Palm Beach Atlantic University and already have gone out to buy franchises and to build their career as franchisees, a thought that prior to coming to college, they never had, before. So it's pretty exciting to see that happening. And
Yeah, I can kudos to you in that program. I love hearing that because, yeah, until recently, the average age of franchisees coming in, it's kind of like they just about got their kids through high school and things, and corporate America may not be taking as good a care of them, and they're trying to figure out what's next. But boy, lately, in the last 5 years specifically, we have an awful lot of younger folks joining the fish system.
Right.
Franchisees as young as 23 and 24 years old and
Yeah.
doing very, very well. Kind of
Yeah.
breaking the mold that the Merrick family and I kind of thought of for many, many years, and they're proving that they're doing great things. And you hit the nail on the head. They want to be part of something. Just the very nature of our service and providing clean windows to the commercial environment, which turned out to be really important during the COVID era. Even just the service itself was making people happy and smile. And the few times that I did pick up a mop and a squeegee, it's fun to watch the customer smile at the result of our service. But then when you throw on some of the other things that we do with breast cancer awareness programs and the Semper, our commitment to the Semper Fi Foundation and helping our veterans, throwing some of those in, it's just really cool to be a small business owner and be able to do those type of things in your local community.
well, those 23 and 24-year-olds definitely are my graduates, or could be my graduates, coming to fish. I hope that happens. And Randy, I really appreciate this time. We've had a great discussion in general about franchising. Come and visit my students at the Titus Center. We have a huge advisory board, more than 100 franchise professionals who participate. They come twice a year to the campus for meetings. They come primarily to meet one another and to meet our students and offer internships as well as opportunities to become franchisees. And I always bring people like you into the classroom. Students love. They'll ask you questions for hours. That's the nature of the Gen Zs. They're very curious about how things work. And I've got a good group of them, about 70 of them this year, who are pursuing a concentration in franchising. So we also, I know you love golf. You were at Pebble Beach for a while. Had to wait to get you into this podcast until you came back from Pebble Beach. And one of our scholarships at the Titus Center is the Birdie Fund, which our group plays golf and builds a scholarship that they present every year to one of our students. So you can golf here in Florida as well.
I love it. Well, I very much appreciate what you do because as you can tell in the conversation, franchising has changed my life. I would not have found franchising without that consultant or broker network. That's probably why I love those folks so much. And thinking about what you're doing with our younger population and keep teaching and coaching franchising as they're getting their degrees, I think that is just awesome. If we can get a few of those folks to jump right into franchising, that would be fantastic.
Yep.
And yeah, I don't want this to be a sales pitch, but I'd love to talk to a few of them. If you got some ideas, we'd love some new younger franchise owners. So send them our way.
All right, will do. Okay, Randy, well, I appreciate all that, and thank you for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John.
Thanks for tuning in to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast with Dr. John P. Hayes. Tune in next time for more conversation around all things franchising.